nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Thank you for being here. No sé si habrá necesidad para traducción al español. Si no, thank you, Dorothy. Moving on to item A3, I will entertain a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Motion's been made by Director Simmons to approve this evening's agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Mike Garza. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item B1. Is there any public comment? Thank you. Item B2, student representative reports. I'll turn this over to Caden and Isabel.
Okay, so there's a lot going on at OHS coming up. We have our annual blood drive coming up on November 21st, and that is from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's welcome to the community and the school, anyone who really wants to donate blood, which would be awesome, and it would really help us. Our Veterans Day Assembly was really good, and I think it was different than years past. We changed it up so it wasn't so repetitive, and I think that was really good for some people, and it would just went really well. Just so, like, for the update for kind of how the kids are getting involved with the community, I know that some kids are helping with Turkey Bingo coming up tomorrow night. You guys should go. And yeah, that's on that front. And now with when fall sports are finally over, and I know kids are really pumped and they're on a high from how far we got this year, so I think they're really excited for winter sports, and they're really excited to represent our school.
So not too much on my front, but our leadership class is planning a Thanksgiving feast, so it's just going to be like a big kind of feast. So we're thinking about inviting the OSD staff, school board, parents, the fire department, the police department, and the sheriff's office, and then yeah, so it's going to be really fun. Have everybody get involved with each other, and then our flagpole and our reader board should be getting put up soon, so that's really exciting. And yeah, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, guys. Moving on to item B3, board member reports, and we'll begin with our legislative report. Director Simmons.
Nothing to talk about today, but I'm sure I will be coming back with some information after the WASDA conference.
Great. Linkage committee results, and I believe, Jen, if you're here to do a presentation about linkage committee.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So for our linkage committee, we had a few people on the committee. If you can, I guess I used the entire screen, and there's not a lot of... and I think that there's possibly one or two more that I missed on our committee members. We met once, and we had a productive meeting discussing different groups that the board could meet with that meet on a regular basis. I will be emailing you the detailed list of the person, the time, their phone number. I just didn't want to put that here for everyone to have. So, and then I separated them into groups. Ding. Thank you. So there's coffee groups. The senior center, they meet for coffee, and that's quite a variety of people that meet there for that. And then the fire station, periodically they meet for coffee there. I wasn't able to find the exact times on that. And it was suggested the Shell Station coffee group, that's mostly the farmers and the ditch riders. So if you want to talk to them, 6 a.m. at the Shell Station. Or talk to a ditch rider, although it's not quite the right season. Talk to a ditch rider and they'll talk to all of the farmers for you, is what they specifically said at a meeting. So they'll get all of that. Ding. So then there's groups of boards, different board, whatever. There's a whole bunch of boards in the town. Chamber of Commerce, so the little asterisks mean you as board members could join this group individually. I guess I need to put that closer because I'm not accustomed. I just talk so loud that I don't usually use a microphone. So the Chamber of Commerce, and one of you mentioned that you had never specifically been invited to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I mentioned that to the board, the person that runs it. I cannot remember her exact title right now.
Still haven't been invited.
She said they've gotten plenty of letters. I don't know what his problem is. And I said, maybe the letter never made it to his desk. Anyways, Chamber of Commerce, you can attend their board. The Beautification Committee, they are actually a wide cross-section of our community and are very, very active on lots of different things. Rodeo Board, Fair Board, both of them would love to have you on their board, and the Food Bank Board did not specifically say, yes, you can join our board, but I'm sure they wouldn't say no. So, ding. You were waiting, weren't you? Then there's groups that are not focused around food, but meet to have food, and I love food, so I stuck them in their own group. So, Third Thursday dinner, some of you probably attend, although I would suggest that if you're going to talk to them, go to small table groups instead of a large group. Wasn't probably as effective as some members of the executive committee have experienced to talk to the whole group at once. Last Friday lunch is something that the chamber facilitates. They meet on the last Friday of every month for lunch at the senior center also. And that's also a wide cross-section of just different members of our community. Rotary, I know that you already attend that periodically, and PAC. I hope you all know what PAC stands for. I actually had to look it up. I couldn't ever remember what it stands for. Parent Advisory Committee. They also have dinner. So, under the food section. Ding. Then there's lots of Facebook groups that this is a good way to reach a variety of people. These are often members of our community. They're not always on one of these other groups. But Othello Indoor Yard Sale, Othello Community Events, those two groups you have to invite yourself to join. Request to join, I guess, is the right term. If you're not already a member, you do have to be on Facebook for that. I know at least one of you are active on Facebook. We Love Othello is not a group to join, but it is something you can post on. And I am sure that there are Spanish groups because sometimes I see them in my feed, but I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know exactly what they're saying. So, okay. And then these are just other kind of groups that didn't quite fit into. So I know you already attend Lions periodically. There's Lutheran Quilting Ladies, and I know for a fact they would love to have you join them. And they're very fun as well. Sometimes there's food there. Cantata practice, that is a wide variety of people and also a very time-sensitive thing. Othello Choral Society, this is not quite the right name, Buddy Hospital Group, but they raise money for children's hospitals. Then there's a ministerial group that different members of ministers from or pastors from different groups will meet. It's usually once a month for lunch, and then you could always ask to go and speak, or what would the best way to reach their congregations would be. And then there's Eagles. Oh, I guess I got PAC on there twice. I really wanted you to go. And then there are 4 different beta groups. Someone's wife knows how to get involved in that one. So I would suggest talking to that one. All right. And then different employers that are in town that have the largest number of employees. And this is not in order of that, but the top 4 is CBHA, Simplot, McCain's, and Othello School District are the top 4 employers in the city of Othello. But other ones that have many employees are the hospital, SVZ, Othello City, including the police department, and Adams County, including the sheriff's office. All of those are very large employers. And then probably the only way to reach many members of our community is through churches, to go and speak to congregations. and that would have to be figuring out how and when and those kinds of things. I know that one of the congregation that I attended, we did have someone from the school district a few years ago come and specifically talk to the adults about what happens when there is an emergency, how you cannot go and pick up your child, and those kinds of things. We specifically asked that individual to come and talk to us because it was before there were some problems that had happened. But we had started hearing rumors, and so we wanted to know exactly the details. So I know that there are definite congregations that are happy to have conversations. So, any questions? I talk really fast. Sorry, that's just me.
Any questions from the board?
So I'm curious, Jen, of these, so all of these groups you've contacted and they want to meet with us?
Most of them, yes. Of those that were on the committee, some of them have actually done their assignments, and some of them I haven't heard back from. But so that's why I'm getting you a detailed list of when they meet or who the contact is and the phone number.
Okay.
But for the most part, the feelers that we put out, they all specifically said yes.
All right. Thanks, Jen, for all the information on the linkage committee. I think it's important information. Thank you so much. Moving on now to, wanted to have a board discussion very quickly regarding Survey Monkeys. Just wanted to see with the board and get a consensus from them as to an opportunity that I'd like for us to discuss regarding the comments that we leave in Survey Monkeys, especially those that pertain to not being in compliance for Dr. Hurst. And so I think I shared this with a couple of the board members already, but when we review those Survey Monkeys and we read the comment and then we allow the board member to explain what he meant with that comment and then try and get consensus from the board whether we're going to keep that comment or not. One of the things that I wanted to ask the board is if we could allow then an opportunity for Dr. Hurst to then share the reasoning behind what was in that monitoring report to see if maybe we understand the reason why he either included it in the monitoring report or not. And so to give him an opportunity so that we can consider him not being in compliance and not in compliance. And so I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I wanted to have that discussion and see if it was okay with the majority of the board to allow Dr. Hurst that opportunity to do that.
I guess my personal feeling is the way governance should work is that if the board's finding Dr. Hurst out of compliance, that as early as the next board meeting, Dr. Hurst could be resubmitting why he's in compliance now. You don't have to wait till the next year to be in compliance. Would be my feeling there. I don't mind explaining it at the time either, but any policy that's in compliance with an exception or not in compliance, that Dr. Hurst has the opportunity to be able to. Some of them you just can't fix that quickly, but if it's just it wasn't in the report or it's missing, I think Dr. Hurst would always have the opportunity to go back and resubmit the support and become in compliance. I think it's actually in a policy somewhere where we've talked about that. Maybe we talked about it when we went to the governor's meeting, that one of the things that we hadn't been doing was asking for a date that the policy would be in compliance.
What do the other board members think?
I have no problem ever with Dr. Hurst commenting after we make our comments from the Survey Monkey. I would say one thing I'd be concerned about if we monitor and then always get an opportunity to redo a report, we stand to monitor every parts of every policy twice all year, and I would shy away from that, other than just maybe just have Dr. Hurst say, by the way, in response to your exception that was in your guys' monitoring document, I've done this, I've taken these steps. I think that would be wise. So because I think we should only be finding compliance based on the report that was submitted, or if we've made actually seen something, direct inspection, right? Or a third party, which we've never had that done. So really, it's always by report or by direct inspection. So if something's left out of the report, then it could just be a matter of, you know, if we said, I didn't see any evidence of this, Dr. Hirsch could provide the evidence at the next board meeting, that'd be fine. I don't know if you were saying to resubmit a report.
That's kind of what I'm saying is,
Okay.
for me, what I would want to shy away from is saying, is a situation like, for example, maybe something got missed in the report and it wasn't there. And for a board member makes a comment and then Dr. Hirsch just says, it's there and here's why it's there. For me, I would rather have it in writing because I have lapse of memory from time to time, and when I go back and research it later, it's hard to fumble through 1,000 recordings to try to find one statement somewhere where it was orally fixed in the report where it wasn't there, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I think like Tony, a report that he will provide insurance for everything, but we didn't see the actual policy or whatever. He has the opportunity to say the policy is enforced, this is what it is, and a chance to defend himself, he'll always be granted that. Not that he has to. You know.
Well, and I think it's up to us as a board that if, you know, we've already done the monitoring document. And if Dr. Hirsch shows later that, no, I'm now in compliance, or I was in compliance, here's the information, it's up to us to, in the final evaluation at the end of the year, to make notes of that. So, yeah, we're gonna go through each one of those policies. If there weren't more ones with exceptions or out of compliance, we can make a note that before the end of the year, Dr. Hirsch brought this into compliance, right? I think that would be on us to make sure we're keeping track of that.
So I'm in total agreement, and so I just want to make sure that Dr. Hurst understands that what we've agreed on today, so that allows you an opportunity to respond.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the clarity also.
So,
Definitely.
thank you, Board. Moving on to, I believe, the majority of us, I think all the four of us that are here went to a Wajitas Elementary School visit and really enjoyed ourselves. And I want the board to be able to share a little bit of about that visit. And so I'll begin by saying number one, I'd like to be the first to congratulate Wajitas Elementary in receiving the Elementary School of Distinction Award for the second year in a row. Congratulations to you guys. It's evident that you guys are doing some pretty amazing things at Wajitas, and so we hope that you would continue to do so. For those of you who don't know, and I don't know too much of it other than I know that this award goes only to the top 5% of elementary schools, public elementary schools in the state of Washington, and so it's a very high honor, and so congratulations. And I, for one, enjoyed the visit. It's wonderful to be able to walk into a classroom and watch how teachers have students completely engaged in learning, and Wajitas does an amazing job of that, and so I was very pleased, and with their report on their data, it looks very good, and so I enjoyed my visit. I'll let you guys share as well.
I always have a good time visiting the schools. Every school has its own culture, and I always appreciate the positive culture that's been created at Wajitas, and just feels like a positive atmosphere when you get there. I've said in the past, for me, I think at some point we should forego the data meetings that we have and just have those at the board meetings. But other than that, I think all the rest of the the meeting at Wajitas itself was really good. We had great participation from parents and from the teachers and from the students as well.
We always get good feedback from all the meetings we have at Wajitas whenever we go to visit there. It was, Tony spoke to the culture, and the culture is something you can feel, the positive culture at Wajitas, and I think the really good thing is that through some changes of administration over the last few years, that remains. So that speaks a lot to the staff at Wajitas, I believe. I wanted to clarify for myself and also kind of for our audience and listeners, am I right in that school distinction, so that people don't think it's the top 5% performing schools, it's the top 5% in growth, is that correct? growth from previous year. And that's important, obviously, because as a board, that's a huge thing for us, and it's our motto for our district is growth. And so to have Wahidas showing this growth, and we saw it in the data that we saw a couple board meetings ago, but to have Wahidas be a school of distinction, be in top 5% of growth 2 years in a row is really impressive. So nice job, Wahidas.
No, very good. Just to piggyback on what these gentlemen have said, it was a great visit. Kudos to Sandy and Amy for, like they said, the culture. New administrators. I know Sandy was there last year for a bit, but the fact that it's palpable, it really is. You guys are staying on top of your group. The whole school of distinction thing, I'm glad to see Justin here tonight. I think he deserves some kudos for that because he was the administrator part of the year last year, and good job, Justin. The groundwork, the foundation that your predecessors laid there is still there, and these ladies are building upon it. Also, like Tony said, I think this is one of the first parent meetings where we actually had some real good conversation, real good questions, a lot of participation from the parents. Not that it doesn't happen at the other schools, but there was a lot of discussion about the bond and how we're doing this and what it entails and all. And it was good to also, the student section of it, or the conversation with them was actually very, it was good. It wasn't your typical, I love recess, that's my favorite period, and there was actually some essence to it, and great visit. I enjoyed it, had a real good time.
All right. And the last thing on our, for board member reports is the WASDA conference, and so I just want to mention to the board and share with the board that if you've secured your schedule and you have it down, you need to let Talia know as soon as possible. I know that she probably has a couple questions. If not, you need to see her today before the board meeting is over so that she knows your exact schedule, what day you're leaving, what day you're coming home, so that she can adjust any hotel reservations. And so please see her as soon as possible. Is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I just wanted to let everyone know, as one of the board members, that you are currently registered for the WASDA conference from Friday, November 17th to Sunday, November 19th. You do have your hotel reservations from Wednesday, meaning that you would attend the pre-conference, but that is something that you're not registered for, but it is completely up to you if you do want to be registered for the pre-conference. The pre-conference has a law conference, a new board boot camp, and an open government training, so that is completely up to you. But please let me know and we will get you scheduled. If not, if you do want to forego being there from Wednesday, then I can make arrangements for you to arrive on Thursday instead of Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
As far as rides, I think, Rob, are you going to ride down with me, and then,
Yeah, if I could, that'd be great.
okay, and
I'd go
you're
by myself.
going to go by yourself? Okay.
I believe, who's taking our student reps? Okay, Talia is. Okay. So you guys ready and excited to go? Okay, great.
And the student reps are going to go on Thursday, or?
So that was going to be a discussion for the board of directors as well. If you would like them to attend to the board workshop, then that would be on Thursday, so we would be on Wednesday. That's up to you. And then also the availability of the board representatives. So Kaden said that it is completely fine with her, as right now it's just up to this board.
Have you looked at what the meetings are on Thursday?
There is a suggestions for student representatives to attend the new board workshop. So, like I said, that is completely up to you. And Isabel, if she can be in attendance for those 4 days.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'd leave it up to them. If it's something that they feel like they'd be interested in doing, then I think you should go. I know there's some specific student rep events starting early Friday morning. I mean, the first one's at 7:30 in the morning, so for sure I think they'd want us at least be there to stay Thursday night so they can do the networking. It's a networking breakfast and things start with the student reps early Friday morning. I'm assuming you wouldn't get up at 3:30 in the morning to be there, so.
Gotcha. Thank you, Talia. Moving on to item C1, required approvals. I will entertain a motion to approve these consent items at this time.
I move to approve item C1, required approvals.
Motion's been made by Director Ashton to approve item C1, required approvals. Do I hear a second? Second by Director Mike Garza. Discussion?
I have some if nobody else does. On the classified director contract, it's supposed to end June 30th?
Yes, it is.
So it's just a 6-month contract? 7 months?
7 months.
Okay. That was the only question I had in that.
Okay, if there isn't any other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item C2, Executive Director of Business Services, follow-up items. Dr. Hurst.
So we'll turn it over to Dr. Brian Boda. He has several items that he's going to follow up with. Dr. Boda.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have a number of things here to present, and we're just going to run on down the list. Our very first topic with the FFA. I have spoken with both Krista DeTrolio and Joe Silva, who oversee the FFA program here at Othello High School. They're very, very interested in the possibility of utilizing a portion of the district's land off of Lee Road for an educational farm of some type. Mr. Silva, in particular, was quite explicit that we would need to run the numbers and make sure that it's economically feasible. Prior to that, he is adamant that he does not want to operate this at a loss, so it has to either break even or be profitable. Because of that, they wish to wait and see which farmer will end up taking over that lease, because it is very likely that they will need to work in close concert with that farmer. They do not have all of the machinery, all of the inputs that are needed, and depending on what type of irrigation that farmer puts in, what type of crop they're planting, compatibility. So they're very, very interested, but they're not yet committed to it. Again, they would be farming a rather small portion of that land, no more than 15 acres, likely less. And so talks are ongoing, but we do not have, a decision has not been made at this time. Regarding the 45-day notice for the lease, ads have gone out in 3 papers. Ads for the lease appeared on November 1st and the 8th in the Tri-City Herald. They appeared on the 2nd of November and the 9th of November in both the Columbia Basin Herald and the Sun Tribune. The district has received at least one, we've been contacted by at least one farmer who is interested, and I am working directly with local irrigation companies to find out the cost to both the district and to this individual regarding irrigation. As the board stated, we do have a 45-day notice, and so we chose the last date of publications, which would be the 9th of November, to begin that 45 days, just to be equitable to everyone. That would mean that the 45 days is up on Christmas Day, so farmers would have until the 26th of December to submit that bid. Moving on to the gate replacement at the Regional Transportation Center here in Othello, the gate has been replaced. And by the way, we have been reimbursed by our insurance company for that replacement. It is no longer an electronic keypad. It is now a padlock style, And our Director of Transportation, Marion Shade, states that it is working out very well, and they're very pleased with it.
What did we do with the, we must have got a credit back or something, right? I assume the electronic keypad's more expensive than the other kind, right?
So insurance paid for the entire replacement minus our deductible. Ms. Shade did not notify me what happened to the electronic portion of the gate. She simply said they're working on disposing of it. So my assumption would be,
Oh, so it wasn't out of repair then? The electronic part still works. It's just somewhere it hasn't been installed? Or
no, so the old gate was electronic, so you would pull up and you would enter a code and it would automatically open.
Right, but they ran through the gate, right, and broke the
Yeah.
gate.
And
Did
the gate is no longer functional, so
Correct.
it has been removed.
So they broke the electronics too?
Well,
The keypad and
The
everything?
electronics are, I believe they still remain, but they're simply non-operational. I would have to inquire with Ms. Shade. I do not know at this time.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
curious
She
what
simply
happened.
stated
I
that
saw him physically locking the gate. That's what prompted my question.
Yeah. So there is the current gate has 0 electronic component. It's simply a manual lock.
Can you tell me what happened to the gate, Brad? I don't know what happened to it.
I don't either. It was hit by a vehicle last year.
Employee or just
I do not know.
we got there one morning and it was
I believe it was malicious. I had heard they had
I have
video
no idea what
of,
happened.
It was before you came.
gotcha.
It preceded me. But our insurance did cover it minus the deductible, and it covered the installation of the new gate in full. Pete?
My only question would be is what happened to the electronic equipment? Because I'm sure it wasn't damaged. Not that it should or shouldn't be put on. I would just be curious where it is and what happened to it. And
I have a piece of information about what happened to the gate initially, and one of our employees happened to be driving by at the time that the incident occurred. As I recall from last year, it was early evening. Somebody either wasn't paying attention or was incapacitated in their driving and drove right through the gate, backed out their vehicle and left the scene. But the video that we were able to capture, we weren't able to identify who that driver was or who the vehicle was. So the gate was pulled apart. Greg Foltz, our safety director, I believe, would have the most detailed information about the electronics itself if you wanted that briefly.
So when we contacted the gate company to get a new gate installed, we had some discussion about the electronic gate and the problems we had with it. And the decision was made with the transportation director, the assistant superintendent, and maintenance department to not install an electric gate again and just put in a manual open gate. So currently the electronics are just sitting there, not being used.
What was the problem with the electronics before?
The electronic gate? We had 2 issues with it. One was it really was they kept telling us that the design wasn't really designed to stay open all the time the way we were utilizing the electronic controller, that it was designed to open and close and not be locked open. So we had to tweak that a little bit to make it work the way we wanted it. And the other discussion about it was if we lost power, the only way to open that gate was to disconnect it or crank it open, and it took 6 cranks to go about 2 inches. And the manual gate just made more sense. The insurance would have paid for either one, but it was just a choice that they made that they wanted. Easier for them to maintain and keep track of.
so is there a way to get a credit? I assume that I'm making an assumption that those kind of electronics aren't cheap.
Yeah.
And so is there a way that we can sell that back to somebody to get some of that cost back, or is it going to end up being a surplus item?
It would end up being a surplus item because it's not a defective part from the construction. It's something we chose not to utilize anymore.
Let me know when that surplus auction is.
Goes to schools first.
Okay.
Groundwater update. Earlier this week, Greg and one of our board members was on site. Again, this is at the Regional Transportation Center. They took some elevation readings, and they have ordered some test holes to be dug. The test holes should be in this month, along with a meter that will allow us to track groundwater levels over the winter. Depending on what the data show, it'll then be determined if a portion of that asphalt needs to be removed and relayed, if there needs to be any remediation done for stabilization.
What company are we using for that?
Greg?
Good. As long as it wasn't one company, that's all that matters to me.
When they dig they're going to bore the test holes, and then they'll do analysis of the dirt and rock that comes out of those test holes. And we won't tube every hole, but we have specific locations we'll tube to monitor groundwater in the problem areas. And then we're going to do some bore tests in other locations just to get an idea what the water is around the facility.
In our last item, we have some financial numbers. After this agenda item is the bond resolution. So these numbers are simply running through what the bond will be. This is a brief presentation. I'll just run through it. So this is the February 2018 bond that we anticipate will appear on the ballot. It's a single bond authorization of $61,415,861. We anticipate 2 bond sales. The reason that we're doing 2 is due to debt capacity reasons. We'll get further into that in this presentation. The first sale will occur in spring of 2018. The second sale will occur as debt capacity allows. Our best guess is that'll be in either 2020 or 2021. And that depends on assessed value growth. The projected interest rates for these bonds for the first sale of $40 million in 2018 is the current rate plus 0.75%, with the second sale being either in 2020 or 21 being the current rate plus 1.25%. Both sales will be the 21-year bond term. That is the maximum allowed by state law. Moving down to project summary. This gives an overview of what I just said. The bond will fund a two-phase project. This project is a two-phase project. The first phase is the construction of 2 brand new schools, an elementary school and a middle school on the 81 acres owned by the school district off of Lee Road. The total projected cost for that project is $34,272,309. There's a projected state match of $4,012,226, meaning that the district has to come up with $30,260,083 to proceed with that first phase. The second phase is making Othello High School like new and upgrading it and increasing its capacity by 50% from the current capacity of 1,000 students to 1,500 students. The total projected cost of that portion of the project, $42 million, $96,788. The projected state match for that portion, $8,741,010, bringing the total district cost for that second half to $33,355,778. The total, again, from the last slide, the total of the project, $76,369,097, with a total projected state match of $12,753,236, brings the total district cost to $63,615,861. There is further a state K-3 class size reduction grant of $2,200,000, and that brings the total amount required down to $61,415,000, excuse me, $861. And that is what the bond in February will reflect. So again here, this simply reiterates what we already went over. Total cost, state match, bond authorized amount, 2 bond sales. The first will occur in spring of 18. The second is anticipated, I repeat, anticipated to occur in either 2020 or 2021. It'll be split, the first sale $40 million, the second making up the remainder $21,415,861. Moving on to the debt
Brian,
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to go back to that
Previous
two
slide?
slides from there. One more slide up. On that one, I'm just reading the footnotes below so that I can understand if someone asks me. The first note, can you explain that?
Reflects forecasted maintenance level, 2018 ACA.
Yeah.
These notes were given to us by Mark Pressing, our CPA for this project. I feel that I would be better able to answer that after consultation with him. So I can't answer it offhand, but I will check in with Mark in order to do that.
Okay. And yeah, that was my only question on that then. I guess you'll get an answer for all of them.
I will, yes, sir. Okay, moving back down to debt capacity analysis slide. So here, as I mentioned previously, this is a 2-phase project. The reason behind that being we do not have the available debt capacity to do everything right offhand. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you will see the district's total debt capacity, which is limited by the state to 5% of assessed value within the Othello School District. The third column, you will see our current debt, and this is principal only. And then the available debt capacity yields is calculated by our total debt capacity minus our debt. So on the left-hand side, this is if no bond is passed or no bond went forward in February of 18. And you can see that with time, available debt capacity steadily grows. The column to the right, this is our available debt capacity provided the bond does pass. So you'll see that if you move down to the second line in 2018, if the bond passes in February and we issue $40 million in new bonds, we will still have an available debt capacity of just under $6 million. So that would not be enough to sell the remaining portion of the project. And we would have to wait until approximately 2021 for the second bond sale of $21,415,861. And so you'll see that under this schedule, we never exceed our debt capacity, and we always have debt capacity remaining with those 2 sales. But this helps to explain why it has to occur in two parts. Questions on this from anyone?
My question is probably fairly simple. Hopefully. The resolution we're passing really doesn't specify when we're going to sell the bonds and the amount, right? That was my main question. Is the $40 million that you're referring to? That's something that isn't set in stone. Just the $61 million.
That is absolutely correct.
I may have some questions if the bond passes. When we get to that point, I may have some questions about why the $40 million. But today, it's really irrelevant from my view, anyway.
Yes. If you gentlemen pass this resolution, the only thing, as you mentioned, the only thing that it solidifies in stone is that $61 million value. And if we move down to the next slide, annual and projected tax rate detail. Again, this came from Mr. Pressing. This shows with calendar year, the furthest column to the left, anticipated growth within the school district in assessed value. It shows that we have the third column. We do have existing bonds that will be paid off in approximately, well, not approximately, they will be paid off in the year 2027. Provided the bond passes, the first sale in 2018 is projected In the fourth column, and the second sale in the fifth column. The sixth column, total bonds. This is simply an addition of the third, fourth, and fifth. The operating levy, which is separate from the bond, but we get our total tax rate by adding the total bond rate and the operating levy. And so the total tax rate, the yellow column to the right, this is the anticipated total tax rate that everyone within the Othello School District would be assessed per assessed $1,000 in value of their property. In the smaller box over to the right, again, we have the bond sale amounts. As Tony mentioned, not set in stone, but these are anticipated. The total of $61,415,861. And just to give a example, if you own a $200,000 assessed property, and with a 96 cents per assessed $1,000 value increase, provided the bond passes, you would be looking at a change in total annual taxes of $192 beginning in 2019. Moving on to the last slide, this simply says the same thing in graphical form. It shows the representation, the amount of our local school taxes based on what it funds. So our operating levy, our existing bonds that we currently have, those are in blue. The 2018, so the first of two bond sales, is in the orange. And the 2021 bond, the second of two bond sales, is in the baby blue. Questions on this?
I have a question. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Oh, is there a way, I think I've asked this before, but is there a way that really, and again, it has nothing to do with what we're approving tonight, it really has to do with when I get calls from business people as to what this is costing them. Is there a way to find out what the per acre cost is increase for farmers? I know it's not it's calculated differently, and I'm not sure I could even express it the way it is, but there's some kind of a discounted value that they get, and then they pay tax on that discounted value. So it's been difficult for me to answer the question of what's it going to cost me per acre.
Yes, I can definitely get you that number.
Not a question, more just an observation that I find interesting. So we're currently 10 years into our current bond that was if I remember right, Board can help me, $28 million bond to the community in 2007. And we're right now paying $1.83 per thousand assessed, correct? And that this bond, when we sell a grand total of $60 million, even though we're not going to sell it all at once, we're looking at $1.88 even for the first $40 million. It just speaks to the increase in assessed value of the properties in this school district over the last 10 years. Now I know that the average person who has owned the same property says, yeah, but I'm still paying a lot of money because my property increased in value, so I'm paying more per thousand. But it does spread it out. There's a lot more property owners today than there was 10 years ago, so it does spread that out on over more people that can share the cost of that, which is why we need to have more schools, because I believe when I got on the board 10 years ago, we had 3,000 students in the district, and one of the things I asked about was what our current enrollment is, and I think it's close to 4,400 now. That's a huge growth in 10 years, almost 50%. That was just an observation.
Any other questions from the board? If not, we'll move on to item C3, and I'll entertain a motion to approve this bond resolution number 11-13-17.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Director Mike Garza. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Director Simmons. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 4-0. Moving on to superintendent comments.
I'd like to say good evening, especially to our board of directors, to those in midst. I want to just share a few things with you. We're going to open up a few documents. Let's open up the, as soon as the voting is finished.
My computer's locked up, I can't vote, so vote for me.
Can you vote for him?
Let's open up the business list first. We have shared this before, but just wanted to, again, share with the board of directors that we've managed to develop a list of more than 80 organizations. Some I heard Jen Stevenson talking about also is on this list. And the directors, executive directors, assistant superintendent, and myself have been very diligent in visiting these organizations. When you scroll down, you can see that there are some that we're still trying to connect with. I'm not saying that we haven't connected, but part of that is just waiting for them to respond to us. But for the most part, you can see that we have attacked every one of those business owners. I was just sending a message to my executive assistant also as Jen Stevenson was speaking. There's some names that she had mentioned that we had not captured, so I suspect that we'll be pulling from that list and touching bases with those organizations also. And as I've shared before, if there's any other organizations that anyone is aware of, our mission and our goal is just simply to educate. So we're really wanting to get out to as many organizations as possible. So just please send us that information. We would appreciate it. Let's go ahead and close this list out.
Chris, is this
Yes.
has this been coordinated with the bond committee, or are they seeing these same individuals on their own, or do you know?
I don't know. I can reach out to the to Wino Dominguez and check in with him to see what his efforts are. We have met with him a couple of times, but he's not shared his strategy with me yet at that time. So we'll reconnect and find out, and then share with the board. We also wanted to share with the board some other things that we have planned, and also want to share correspondence from an attorney. But let's open up the flyer first. Yes. So this is a flyer that was created. We're working in collaboration with another ESD 112. Her name is Lori Oberheide. I've mentioned her name before. And she has put together this flyer that can also be converted to a mailer. So basically it's the same thing, but we'll just attach a postal stamp to it, and it'll go out to all of our community members. We also have this available in Spanish also. One of the things I want to point out to you as you look at these flyers, you look at this information, this is just simply factual information that we're stating to the community. And as the district, we are just obligated to give and provide factual information, and that's it. So that's what we're doing, just trying to reach out and just share factual information. I do want to share also the other artifacts that we're looking at. A possible banner. This is a simple banner. It has ease overcrowding in our schools, the bond election date, February 2018, and then the bond measure that's being considered at this time, as Dr. Boda talked about, the elementary school, the middle school, and then the like new high school. And then if you can close that out and go to the attorney
Chris?
conversation. Yes.
Can I interrupt? On the Spanish pamphlet,
Yes, sir.
whatever this is,
Can you go back?
is this printed already?
It
this
is not.
published? I think we have a spelling error.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to point it out or.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Okay, it's under secundaria, the third bullet point, agregar un nuevo espacio de gimnasio para acomodar el crecimiento. I think it should be crecimiento. I tried looking for that word all afternoon and couldn't find it. So I think it's just a misspelling.
Awesome.
I was going to say something about that, but.
So one of the things, we have a couple of in-house people also that we will send these documents to before they're actually published. So nothing has been published yet. I just wanted to call attention to this communication that transpired today. Just to let everyone know that there are guidelines by the state from the Public Disclosure Commission, and they really set very clear guidelines and expectations around what can be said, what districts can do, and what districts cannot do as far as sharing information. That's why I've been very careful in just sharing that every document that we produce from the district is factual information, and that's it. One of the big things that I was concerned about is also the use of district funds in making flyers. So I just wanted to really ease that in my mind. Also talking with a couple of attorneys today, and they assured me that yes, you can use district funds to produce factual flyers, factual information, but what he was very careful, as you can see in the highlighted portion, districts really have to be very careful in how they disseminate this information, that you really shouldn't just go crazy just sending out information. There really should be a historical practice on how you do business when you communicate. So one of the things that I know that we've done since we formed our team, even last year, we've done videos. We've met in large groups, small groups, large scale groups. We've met with churches. We've met with just about every community group here in our community. But we've also done a lot of individual conversations also. I mean, you think about the flyers, the webpage, the social media. We've really been aggressive in our communication plan and very consistent also. So we feel very comfortable in the strategy that the district is using, even in this bond process, because we have shown consistency across the board. And again, the thing that we've been very careful with also is making sure that we communicate just factual information. But one of the things the attorney shared also is that really the district should not be sending out or paying with public funds 2 or 3 different types of different communication. It should really be one flyer or mailer, so out of one correspondence. So an example, you saw the flyer that we're looking at. We can take that one flyer and we can convert it to a mailer because it's the same, and use public district funds to send that out. Other than that, we really shouldn't be using district funds doing anything else. So I wanted to just communicate that. We certainly have been watching that, and we've been very careful with the factual information also. I really wanted to share that information with the board also in case it does come up.
My only comment there would just be that we want to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
And that, as far as creating these flyers is awesome, but as far as getting them printed, I know there's several businesses in town that have as good of printers, probably not as good, but pretty good quality printers that could print some of these things, and I'm fairly certain I could give you a list of 4 or 5 that would be willing to print some of that material
Awesome.
for you to offload some of that perception.
Yes, sir.
Just,
That'd be awesome.
Little things like that.
Yep.
A mailing is expensive, so
Yes.
you know that kind of thing is be difficult. The only thing I had a question on, as far as these documents, is the one that says bond facts,
Yes.
where it says the cost. I think you want to be careful with how you word the $15 million in state match funds, because that's not guaranteed.
Awesome.
And the way it's written here, it's perceived that the 15 million, it's estimated 76.4, but the 15 million, the way it reads to me, is a guaranteed reimbursement, and that's not the case as I understand it. It could happen, should
Yeah.
happen, but it's not guaranteed.
Point taken.
So you just want to be careful there.
Okay, awesome. Any other feedback from the board on the flyers or anything? So we'll certainly take all of that in consideration. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. We also provided for the board of directors and also the community just the numbers. The board wanted to make sure that we looked at the numbers by grade level up to date, and we provided that for you also, and also at the bottom as you scroll down and to the right. You can see the numbers, but then also a projection as you go down. As Dr. Simmons, Director Simmons was saying, right around 4,500 projected going into next year. So we just wanted to share that information with the public also. Thank you, sir.
Great. Moving on to item C5. Mr. Tovar, Josh Tovar, is here to present to the Board of Directors attendance and night school contracts. So come on up.
So first of all, thank you guys for the opportunity to be here on behalf of Desert Oasis High School. And I'm going to walk you guys through a series of slides just to kind of tell you a few of the things that we're doing systemically at our school. And I'll kind of start off with the progression, and I'm sure you guys have seen this before, of our improvement cycle and what we're trying to do. This is just one of the components that we're trying to do over at Desert Oasis High School. So if we go to the first slide here. Kind of want to talk about our goal and kind of what our ideal state is currently. And at DOHS, students are expected to attend school regularly, pass their classes, and be online and graduate. Seems like something that's common sense, but at the same time, it's worth mentioning. Some of the things that we've kind of noticed with attendance is students who attend Desert Oasis on a regular basis tend to score higher on their grades, obviously. Students who attend school regularly, they tend to be more engaged with the activities that are going on at school, as well as their classes. And students who are attending night school on a regular basis tend to recover their credit versus those that are not. In regards to when we looked at grades, is again common sense stuff. The highest grades are coming from kids that come to school on a regular basis. Students are achieving high grades, tend to be more engaged in the lessons that are being planned for them as well. They're scoring higher on assessments, whether it's benchmark or classroom assessments. Next slide, please. So we kind of get to this theory that in our mind as a staff, we think that we are preparing students for the 21st century in regards to their skills and access to whether it be college or whether it be post-secondary, some kind of college or career that they might choose, whatever path they might decide to go through. So some of these things that I kind of mentioned are some of the expectations that we have. We expect all of our students to pass a minimum of 5 out of 7 classes in order to stay in our daytime program, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about that. The RCW 28A 225 states that students, should not be missing more than 3 days, and if they are, then we should be doing something about it. And I'll tell you a little bit about CTBs, which are community truancy boards and or BECA petitions. And then when we looked at John Hattie's work in regards to what's relevant to attendance and grades, we looked at classroom behavior. Obviously, if you're going to be in class, then your behavior will be impacted, but it had a 0.63 effect size. And again, in order to be on task, you have to be in class. And I'm going to talk a lot about being in class because when I get asked a lot about what's the hardest thing about DOHS is my answer is always getting kids to come to school on a regular basis. That's the hardest thing. Going through the progression, we now look at next slide, which is our current reality. These are some things that I looked at after we went through our first midterm here at DOHS. And 32% of our classes that our students took were failed by our students. I mean, that means 435 classes were taken, 142 were failed. Currently, we're looking at just daytime students right now. Out of 65 of those students, 29 of them failed 2 or more classes. When I looked at this data, it kind of it was very impactful, and I knew what I was getting into, and I embraced this challenge because that's what it is. It's a challenge at this particular school with academics and attendance. Students are great. Our students are top-notch. I'll put them up against anybody because they're great kids. It's the attendance and it's the grades that we're focusing on. So all of these students that we were referring to here have been met with an administrator and or counselor at the beginning. Obviously, it took us a little over a month to get our counselor in place, but we did. and we appreciate the opportunity of having a counselor full-time at our school. But we've been meeting with them on a regular basis. Some of these kids get met with every week because of their status and their grade level. Obviously, seniors, we take a much more interest in them because they don't have as much time to get to where they need to be, which is graduation. One of the things that I wanted to point out is midterm semester 1, absences averaged about, if you look at our total population, about 6 absences per student per month. We only had 7 perfect attendance for September, 4 perfect attendance for October, and we'll kind of talk a little bit shortly about kind of what we're doing to recognize those particular students. So when we look at kind of the reasons why, I looked at attendance and kind of talked to several students, talked to several staff members, if not all. In regards to attendance, students are just not willing to wake up. Students don't feel that they need to attend school. It's kind of, that's been the accepted norm, culture for our school. Students feel entitled to miss classes. Literally when I ask students, so why did you just leave after lunch? They're just, well, I just got hungry, or I just wanted to leave. Which is, they're being very honest, and our kids don't lie. They tell you how it is. Lack of formal accountability for poor attendance, I put that on us as a school, as administrators. Maybe they haven't been held accountable. And engagement. Engagement's big because if we as a school engage these students in these activities, maybe they'd want to be in school all the time. So that's running through our mind as well. In regards to grades and maybe what's causing that, obviously poor attendance is number one. Lack of student effort. I always believe our students are not ever giving us 100%. I always think they're capable of more, and that's kind of where our expectation line is at. It's really high, and maybe sometimes we've had this conversation. Maybe it's too high for our students. So then when you get to an option, whether it's do you lower your standard or do you just keep pushing? My style is keep pushing. Don't ever lower our standards. And I'll talk more about why and what we're doing to do that. So hang on. Lack of formal accountability for poor grades. Again, kids failed at times in the past, and kind of that's just the way it was, and we continue to move forward. And again, unaware of success criteria, maybe what is necessary in order to have positive grades at our school. Night school attendance, this is a different genre of students that we serve also that come to our school between 5 and 8 p.m. Same thing with these kids. After talking to Mr. Swan, who's been the teacher there for quite some time, he just said, hey, there's inconsistent effort, inconsistent attendance. Sometimes kids go months without being seen. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to get them to come in. So there was a lot of teacher frustration on his part. And again, lack of formal accountability, which is all us as a school. So that's kind of our gap analysis. And then we're looking at next level of work here, and this kind of where we get into some of the things that we're doing. So in working with our staff, we've kind of tried to implement some systemic things, and I say this phrase a lot, but in all reality, it has some meaning. And I've said this to Dr. Hurst, which is I want to put some things into place that if I die tomorrow, anyone can come in as an administrator and take over some of the systemic things that are put in place, because that's how you know there was a good system put in place. So some of the things that we've done, obviously, with our district support and our district help, specifically Mrs. Mendoza, who's a counselor at the middle school, and Benny Medina, who's Adams County Juvenile Court Probation Officer. It's the initiation of community truancy boards. These have been time-consuming, but very, very effective. So far, DOHS has taken 9 students through this process. It's a community truancy board that's held over at the City Hall Courthouse. And out of our 9 students, 8 out of 9 have improved their attendance. 2 of them mildly, which for them is pretty significant if you know the kids that I'm talking about. And for the others, it's been pretty dramatic. Out of those 9, we're only taking 1 to court so far, which is big. Otherwise, I'd be taking 9 to court in Ritzville through a whole BECA formal petition, which is quite another workload as well. So for anybody that's been through that. So 4 of these kids have been asked by the panel to come back up and see how they're doing. We've done several face-to-face meetings with parents and students to discuss issues and obstacles around academics and attendance. We're just constantly looking for solutions, not looking to punish, just looking for solutions so we can help these kids. And personalized meeting with administrator and counselor to help students set goals around attendance, grades, and graduation. Whether this has been done before or not, this is something that we think is extremely vital. We let the kids kind of tell us what it is that they want to shoot for, what their goals are. The implementation of student learning plan is also something brand new, not at your school specifically, but at Desert Oasis it is, and we went through that process, and just as a side note, we had 93% of our students attended their conferences, which in my mind, that's pretty good. And these parents and or guardians that came in went through the whole student learning plan and got to review some data that maybe hasn't happened before, and they were able to sign as well, which is a big push for us in regards to what we're doing. Counselor graduation contracts, I know you guys have them in your packets, but this is something that was done by Priscilla, our counselor at our school, for all seniors, because we want every parent to be aware of these are the options, this is where you're at. We don't want anybody to be blindsided come April or May and find out, I didn't know my kid wasn't going to graduate. Well, these contracts are put in place. They're signed by students. They're signed by the parents as well and or guardians. Continued. So some of the things that we've done, specifically myself, is come up with academic, attendance, and night school contracts. And first of all, the disclaimer is all of these things are put in place to try to kind of engage the student, try to get them to want to come. So when you look at my academic contract and it's saying things like the student needs to pass 5 out of 7 classes in order to remain in our daytime program, we're not looking to remove any student from our school. We're looking, it's kind of more of a scare tactic, but we had nothing prior to this. And this is what one of the biggest complaints from our staff was, nothing happens. They just do whatever they want. And again, the academic contract is intended for these kids to pass their classes. And if they're not able to pass their classes, then we look at the consequences. So if a student's not able to pass 5 out of their 7 classes in this first semester, then they're looking at the reality of going to a night school program. And once they're in the night school program, then the other reality is they can get out. All they have to do is pass 3 classes. We just cut it in half. So 1.5 credits must be earned at night school in order to return back to the daytime program. Again, we have X amount of seats that are available at Desert Oasis High School. We want kids to realize that school matters, attendance matters. And for us, school is not maybe the typical traditional way that it has been. For us, school is school. And school means grades, and part of grades is attendance. And I think Mrs. Prunetta here will probably be the first one to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly from new leadership there at Desert Oasis. But again, do we care about our school? Absolutely. Do we care about our students? Absolutely. Will we go the extra mile? Every single one of my staff. Another thing that I say on a regular basis is I don't have one teacher that's there for a paycheck. Every single one of my teachers, they're there for more than a paycheck, which means a lot to me because I can work with all the other stuff. So that's a big compliment to our staff, and that's everybody, all the way to our custodian, Mr. Mercado. Attendance contracts, again, these are just face-to-face meetings that I have with my parents. It's just a statement, a disclaimer that says, I've talked to you, I've met with you, the plan is that we will get you to come to school, and this is what I'm willing to do, whether it's call you every morning or pick you up when I have to, or communicate with your probation officer or contact your parents. Again, this is just another intervention to try to get these students to realize we need you to come to school. It's also an opportunity for them to tell us what the obstacles are in their life to see if we can help them with those. Night school contracts, what we require night school students to do is to attend a minimum of 2 times per week at 1 hour minimum. They can pick the days that they want to come, but we do want them there to come. We do want them to come in 2 times a week for a 1 hour minimum. If these night school students go more than 2 weeks without checking in with Mr. Swan or with us, then we will be contacting them and finding out, are you continuing this program, or we need you to come into school. So again, it's significant because again, it hasn't been something that's been practiced at our school in the past. All tests and quizzes that are taken through the Odyssey online programs will be taken in the presence of Mr. Swan as well, just to avoid any kind of confusion or cheating. Our assemblies have always had, we've only had a couple assemblies, but at our school the focus has been attendance, attendance, attendance. And even our last one where we kind of did our celebration for kind of school spirit, it was focused on us giving some kind of a heart-to-heart at the very beginning or at the very end or both, and just telling kids, hey guys, we all we're trying to do is do our job, and we want to make you the best. We want to make you guys reach your full potential so that you guys can get to graduation. Again, some kids it goes in one ear and out, right out the other ear, but the reality is if we can impact a grand majority of them, that's our goal. PBIS system implemented to improve student culture. Those kids that had perfect attendance, as well as we started Student of the Month at our school. Every teacher identifies a Student of the Month, and then we take the perfect attendance students. We've been averaging about 10 to 12 students, and we do a celebration right at the end of the month. It's immediate, it's impactful, whether it's root beer floats and a movie, and we have it in our computer lab with the blinds open so all the kids can come through there and kind of see why are they in there, and hopefully that inspires them to want to be in that. All they got to do is show up to school and or be nominated for Student of the Month. Again, those that have gone through it, we've had few kids that have gone through it now both times, and they like it. They want to always continue watching the last movie because we don't ever have enough time to watch a complete movie, but they're enjoying it. Let's see, next slide. Again, our progression. Okay, monthly monitoring. We're going to continue to monitor this. We have some spreadsheets that we share on our accountability meetings with Dr. Hirsch, and we keep track of their grades. We keep track of their attendance. We're transparent with all our data. We are also in the process of getting a monitor, a large, I think, 51-inch monitor in our school. We're waiting for a mounting bracket, and once it's there, this data will be kind of rolling through there, as well as different types of activities that our kids are involved with. But definitely, we want to be transparent with all stakeholders in regards to how we're doing in each of these areas. We're going to continue individualized kid-by-kid meetings with these students on contract, and these kids that are struggling, we increase the amount of times that we meet with them. You've also heard of these kids known as EWS, Early Warning Signs students. These are your students that are struggling academically, struggling with state assessments, struggling with attendance as well. Consistent parent contact throughout this process. I think our parents are great. Some of them are kind of given up on some of their students, but those that haven't, we maintain this collaboration with them, and it's a partnership to try to get their kids to the finish line. I believe that was my last slide. That's it. So this is kind of my main goal for sharing this with you guys as a school board, is to make you aware in case you guys hear through the community or you're asked any questions about, hey, what's this night school contract, or what's this attendance contract that Tovar's running over at DOHS? I want you guys to have some background. Again, our whole focus is we got to get our kids to graduate, and we want them to come to school on a regular basis. So don't know if you guys have any questions.
I have a quick question, Josh.
Yep.
I think it's great, all the efforts that you're putting into to attendance issues and grade issues. My question is that with all these efforts with contracts and assemblies and even PBIS I saw up there, have you seen a drop in suspensions? Because in the past, suspensions were very frequent.
I'm going to tell you this. Suspensions are the last thing on my mind right now, just because I've only done one suspension, and it was on open house day because a student, as a joke, stole a teacher's keys but didn't return them. It's the only suspension that I've done, and everything that I've done referral-wise has been attendance-related. Not much in regards to disrespect at all at our school. So if that was something that was at the forefront and that was fueling a lot of these problems, I definitely would be looking at that. I can get that data, but like I said, I can tell you off the top of my mind, and there's one referral that's been an out-of-school suspension, and it's like a big family, and kids understand that. Like I said, our kids and their character is not the issue. It's the other things that kind of are a big deal. So
Yeah, that, as far as I'm concerned, that's amazing. So thank you.
Good.
Any other
Any other
questions from the board?
Thanks, Josh.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Josh.
guys.
Now we have a fall sports update from our athletic director. So Don, if you would come.
I was asked to basically give you a fall sports recap and just to share students that had their successes, if I'm correct. And so I just started with McFarland, and with McFarland, they're already in their winter season. They started on October 18th. But I did share, and I don't know, Pete, you asked me for some participation numbers recently, and I've shared participation numbers the last 2 years for the whole year. This is just a recap of the fall numbers. And I guess what I wanted to point out there is kind of a trend of lowering participation numbers with the McFarland athletics during the fall, at least. Right now, our numbers were 176 students in the sports, and as you can see, the prior years, in bold there, they were quite a bit higher. And so that concerns me, because I want it doesn't have to be athletics, but I want the kids involved in something. All the research points to the benefits in attendance and academics of being hooked into someone. It helps them connect to the school, and it helps them connect to an adult in their life. And so I guess some visits need to take place about what we can do to get these kids involved. I don't know what their interests are, and the trend I'm seeing, at least towards athletics at McFarland. Now, the high school, we're seeing the opposite. That's encouraging to me. The numbers for the high school this year were 335 athletes, and that's not counting the unified program, which is our Special Olympic program that has both the athletes and the partners that help them. So we had a fair amount of kids at the high school, and that's encouraging. Just a quick recap, because I don't want to read all this to you. And I guess you'll have an obvious opportunity to ask questions you might have related to the high school program in athletics, and what you consider to be success. In terms of postseason play, the football team was the only team that went into postseason this year and qualified for state, and just played their last game Saturday and were defeated in a close game to Stillicum. They were supposed to get hammered, to be honest, and it didn't happen. That game could have gone either way, and the kids played really well. And I think they left feeling really good about themselves and proud of their efforts. We had a lot of students in the football team that qualified for the all-opponent team, and then we even had one MVP with Isaiah Perez, but there's a lot of kids recognized, and they're listed there. Cross country, didn't have anybody qualify for state. They have a district tournament, and we're allowed to take 7 boys and 7 girls, and all 14 of them set personal records for their efforts. And we did have one student that was about 2 seconds out of qualifying for state. They take 20, and he placed 21. Volleyball, tied for 7th in league. Did have one honorable mention for all league, and that was Micaiah Hollenbeck. Soccer team also placed 7th. Had 2 athletes honorable mention, and the unified bowling didn't have any kind of postseason play. This is a relatively new sport. Othello has probably been a leader in unified athletics. We've been one of the first schools around to start that, and this is only our 2nd year of unified bowling, and they go to one tournament, and all of them got a medal. So, but if you have any questions about athletics, we did have 2 students also that were state athletes of the week. That's always nice to get some recognition for some of our kids in that capacity.
Any questions from the board?
No, thank you for the update, Don.
Thanks for the update, Don.
I have a question.
Appreciate it. Oh,
Before you leave,
sorry.
Don. You made a statement of you don't know what we qualify as success or something along those lines. So I just want to make a comment to that. For me as a board member, I think our ends 3 that the board has, following that, I think what qualifies sports as success for me is that the kids learn skills that will help them later in life. But I think we all recognize the majority of our kids playing sports aren't going to be NFL players or maybe even college players. So it's important to me, I guess, that we're finding ways to track things that are happening in these sports that are helping these kids to be able to cope with life after sports, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's something that we do that, or if there's a way to track that. But for me as a board member, I'm mostly interested in that the kids are learning something from the sports. To me, that's more important than the wins and the losses, is that they come out of sports programs being better individuals, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense, and I'm glad to hear that, because that goes with what we have conversations, the coaches and I, on a regular basis about what our purpose is as opposed to what the goals they might set for their team, for the growth and development of these students, and that we're a second classroom, and we're not tournament teams. We're education based, so that's about their learning and the pursuit of those things that are worthwhile. And the kids do. They face all kinds of things in sports, as you well know, that are going to help them as they go through life. And sometimes it's a tough coach. That's, you know, I think about Dr. Hurst here as a Marine Corps drill sergeant and not holding their hand all the time and having to deal with situations. I had a student last week in my office that was having an issue with her coach, and she wanted me to do something, and I wanted her to do something, and that was to go and talk to the coach and have that tough conversation. And she says she's scared. Yeah, it's something you have to face in life, and we talked about that. So you're right, it is opportunity to learn.
Thank you very much, Don. Moving on to item C7, Greg Foltz will give us a tennis court update.
Okay, going to be quick. Last time we talked, they had just finished the fencing around the tennis courts, and if you've driven by there, that's all that's about happened in the last 2 weeks. I don't know if they were afraid they're going to melt in the rain and the snow, or if it was hunting season. So after some heated emails and phone calls, I think we got them back on track. They were back on site today to install the electrical. If you slide to the right a little bit there. Updated schedule shows them completing everything except for the tennis court surfacing this week. That little Lewis blurb of next week is the installation of the matting that will go on the fence. We're still in discussion of whether or not we should install that this fall or do it in the spring when we do the tennis court surfacing, because it's not really needed right now anyways, and it'll just sit there all winter and get another winter weathered. So that is where we're sitting at. Do you have any questions?
I'm assuming that this revised schedule means there will not be kids playing on these courts this spring?
It's all going to depend on the weather, how soon it warms up in the spring. Looking at past weather reports, we don't get warm until the middle of March, and tennis usually starts at the beginning of March.
I assume there's got to be some cure time even after that, right, before they can play on it?
Overnight.
After it's poured. Is it that quick?
Yep. Yeah. And the plan will be to essentially is work in stages, get 2 courts done, move the next 2 courts so that they could, as they work, they get courts available.
So who coordinates this with the tennis folks so they have a plan for what they're going to do with? I think they have pretty good. Maybe that's Don, but my memory is they have a lot of kids that want to play tennis in this.
We had 80 kids last year.
And so I just hope somebody's coming up with a plan for what to do.
So yes, Don will be the one that has to take care of that, unfortunately. But I'll keep in touch with Don as to where we're at and what we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock with the contractor, the surfacing sub, and architects to discuss our options and get something in writing.
So, Greg, you've learned a lot in the last your first month in this role, but this project, I think, for me, it just seemed like there was a total lack of accountability for so long with it. Now, obviously, now that you're in that position, you're able to hold people accountable. Hopefully, in the future, have you learned something from this? Was there nothing in our contract that said work will be completed by, or is there so many loopholes that it's
there's no loopholes.
Weather contingent, right?
The contract just has an end date. work will be complete by the end date, which is the end of the November 31st or 30th. And there's nothing in there for if they the only thing that's in the contract, if they do not complete the work by the date, is that we just don't pay them for it. So at this point, we will withhold the amount of money it would cost for us to pay the surfacing contractor to put the surfacing down until they finish the work in the spring.
So in hindsight, now you're looking at it now, was end of November too much time for this project, do you think? Because there was a lot of days they just didn't show up to work. We all know that.
We know that. There's a lot of days they didn't show up to work. Looking back through the emails, there was, all the way from the beginning, there was emails this project was going too late from the design phase. The setback with the tennis court, the lighting bases, is something they're sitting on really hard that it slowed them down. I don't know if there was some different just decisions we could have made to continue the project along that month that we lost. And then by the time I got in to this position, there really hasn't been anything that I could advise to give them or decisions to make to speed this along other than call them every day and hammer them to show up. So, I mean, I don't know what else I could have done right now.
I'll just make sure that this new contractor is written on a list too of who to avoid in the future, I guess.
We've done work with Shervinell before, and they've usually been a pretty good contractor. So I don't know if it's the subs that's giving him trouble, and he's just not conveying that, or if it's them themselves. But
ultimately, it's his job as a
it's
general.
ultimately his job as a general to get him here. Yeah, and that's the conversation we've had.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Moving on to item C8, our Executive Director of Human Resources has some items that she'd like to update us on.
Thank you. Yes, we have a few follow-up items. The first is addressing a new employee status change procedure that came forth when the start of the school year, when we had an employee who came back to work a full-time schedule when she left the previous school year on a reduced schedule. So filling those loopholes so that doesn't happen again, because payroll failed to get notification of that, so payroll was incorrect. So we have this new procedure in place where the employee would request a change of work status, an i.e. change of schedule, reduced schedule, what have you, and it goes to the supervisor for approval. That would then get notified to HR for additional approval, and then a letter would be drafted, an approval letter, a denial letter with comments on that. So, and then notification to payroll and other appropriate departments. Any questions on that? Okay. So moving on, so plan for recruitment of staff. So 2018 is going to be an interesting year with the new House bill and a new salary model that we're going to be allocating. So that's going to be interesting to see how other districts are going to be comparing to ours and what we're going to be competing with. So we also go to the drawing board with OEA, so in 2018, so we're going to be looking at negotiations as well. And so we plan to come to the board in December with the recruitment plan. The recruitment plan is going to entail pathways for current staff members who are interested in teaching, so the grow our own model. So we're going to address that and what our current staff can do if they're a pair, they want to be a teacher, they have some sort of degree and want to be a certificated teacher, what they can do. In addition, we're going to be proposing a recruiting committee. So we'll have a recruiting committee that will entail teachers, administrators, and staff, and focus on the deliverables of the recruitment plan, and also gain their insight on what could work, or some of the things that we're doing. So that's going to be included in a December report to the board. With that recruitment plan comes a retention plan. So we recruit the teachers, but then how do we get them here? How do we ensure that they stay? How do we retain them? And so right now, I can't tell you, if I look back in last year, I can't tell you why people left. I don't have any data to look at. So this year what we've been doing is having exit interviews with staff. So why are they leaving? Was it working conditions? Was it a challenging work environment? Is it compensation? Is it personal reasons, relocation, et cetera? So we'll be prepared to, at the end of this school year, to come to the board with a report on why people are leaving the district, and so that we can address those, and if we need to approve, anything, that we can go ahead and improve those. So we're excited to be able to share that data when we have at the end of the school year. We've been working hard to recruit sub-teachers. So from the beginning of the school year to date, we have successfully recruited 18 teacher subs. That's a pretty good number. It helps to alleviate some of the stress that, the buildings are in if they have a teacher that's going out on personal development or sick or personal reasons. So with that 18 subs, we launched a pilot orientation program with them to see how, if we implemented a new orientation, any questions or answers that we would get from the subs, and that would help us with launching a new employee orientation program that we would propose to new employee long-term employees. So we did do an orientation with those subs. So in that orientation, we spoke about who is a superintendent. Do you know who he is? Do you know who our board of directors are and what they do? We talked about board governance policies. We talked about district operating policies, where they can find them. We reviewed some important DOPs that they should know, policy procedure type stuff, and then also where they can find important information. We went over the website and so forth. So the idea is to get them performing, get them in the buildings, and get them performing quicker and oriented. So we've been working on that, and alongside, recruitment is, we spoke at our last board meeting about a bus driver shortage. So we're happy to tell you that since the last board meeting, we had 2 new bus drivers that started today that were on routes. And then today, we actually started 2 additional bus drivers in training. So that would be 4 that we're looking forward to by the end of the school year, a total. So we're really excited about that. I think a lot of it has come from, staff just getting the word out. I know Marion said with the Wahidas event that we did, the trunk or treat, some folks said that they applied because they got a flyer from that event. So any marketing that, word by mouth, all that is super helpful. So thank you to the community. It really takes a village, and spreading the word on, our bus driver shortage is really helping.
Sandra, real quick. So
Yes.
4 new bus drivers
So
since our last board meeting.
So we have 2 that started today that completed the training. So on the road today,
And 2 more.
and then 2 more started training today,
And how long does that take?
4 to 6 weeks.
So is 4 new bus drivers enough to make a difference in our proposed bell schedules, and will that take away that need?
So Marianne feels that she needs 6 to be comfortable. We do have one that's retiring in January. We have another applicant that we're looking forward to receiving at the end of the year. That kind of just gave us a heads up. I don't know that, we got 4 in a few weeks. So if we can get some more, then it's likely that maybe we don't have to do a bell change. So we'll think positively.
All right, so that'll make some people happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially my kid, he's got to go to school 15 minutes earlier.
Well, we don't know that yet. So, so the bell time.
One of the others is going to go 15 minutes earlier.
Right.
That's all I know.
Yeah.
I got 3.
Yeah. So we'll address the bell time in just a moment. Also, there was a question on truck drivers becoming bus drivers. And so Marion has stated that truck drivers who have a CDL still would have to go through the school bus driver endorsement, which is 4 to 6 weeks. So same training, still have to go. But any truck drivers who are open to that, we gladly welcome them. So The next item is an update on our surveys. So we had a parent survey at the parent conferences. Thank you to all the parents who participated in that survey, and to the principals and staff who helped set up the survey and making sure that parents were participating. We had 1,140 responses, and so 44.5% of those responses used the bus system, and 44.6 got to school through private vehicle, and 23.9 walked to school. 48.3% strongly favored or favored option 1, which was elementary starting before middle school or high school. And then 45.1% strongly favored option 2, which was the reverse, high school starting before middle school, or middle school and elementary. So that was just part 1 of the surveys. We did do a staff survey, which is still open right now. And the last time I looked at it, just an hour ago, we had about 334 responses. We have around 550 employees. So it closes tomorrow at the end of the day. So we'll see what that brings. The plan is to report out at the November 27th meeting. And then new school bell bus times would take effect January 4th. So right after Christmas break.
Any questions from the board?
Not for me.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
Sandra.
you.
Moving on to item C9, we have Wajitas Elementary. They're going to bring us a presentation, so come on up. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting us here this evening to discuss some of the great things that are happening at Wajitas. Sandy and I are honored tonight to bring 3 of our staff members with us to explain the work that we're doing as a building around the ENDS policies. So tonight you'll hear from Tennille Johnson. She'll explain the work we're doing around END 1. You'll hear from Tamara Lunston, our instructional coach, and Sandy, my assistant principal, around the work we're doing on END 2. And then to wrap us up and bring us home, you'll hear from Amy Palmore, one of our members of our PBIS committee, around the work we're doing with END 3.
Okay. As you know, we're working on N1, which deals with growth in performance. At Wajitas, we are focused and determined to close that achievement gap. Here are a few assessments that we give at Wajitas. And from our assessments, we take the data, and from the data, it drives our instruction. And from there, we are able to, we assess regularly, and then from there, we take our data, and then we are able to meet our students' needs. Our district has been focusing on the math concepts and procedures for the past couple of years, and it so happens that 50% of our Smarter Balance assessment. As you notice that, can you go back, please? As you notice that, you can notice that we, as a district, have kind of just remained the same. With this next slide, I'm going to take a minute because I'm aware. I think that you guys have never seen this before. So go. I could be wrong. I don't know. Have you seen this? Okay. Because when I saw this, I was in awe. I had to take a minute because I got a little emotional about this because this is what we've been doing. I've had a principal that I truly believe in, and he said for many years, just do it, and the next year will be better. So, at Wajitas, we have been doing some amazing things. Our teachers, our students, we have been just working together, and you can see that right here 46%. So we're almost at above, almost 50% at above. So, I don't know. Okay, next slide. There are 1,770 elementary schools in Washington State. There are 130 elementary schools in Washington State like us that are similar. And if you could go to the next one, please. And if you were to look at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade math ESPA scores, you would see, and if you would take the average, we're in the top 10. And this is us.
So, we had kids from preschool age all the way up to middle school age. We had parents, and they were out there in the fields just gathering a ton of produce, and we were able to donate that to the Othello Food Bank. And the other piece to this that I think is, obviously is hands-on because they're physically grabbing the pumpkins, but they're learning where their food comes from. And in the 3 years that we've done this project, hundreds of kids have gotten to see where tomatoes and squash and all kinds of things come from, and it's pretty delightful for them to see where their food comes from. Next slide, please. Oh, go back one more. Sorry. Sandy's going to talk to you about Weed Aid because she knows all about it. Another project that we have coming up is called Bake for Good, and this project is sponsored by a flour company called King Arthur Flour. They'll be coming to town and visiting 4 elementary schools and our middle school, and part of that project is King Arthur Flour teaches kids how to make bread, and then there's a component where kids give back to the community. So the recipe that they make, and they're supposed to go home and make their bread, they keep half of the recipe as their own, and then the second loaf that they're able to make, they donate it to a local organization. And so we've partnered with the Adams County Health Department and with the Othello Food Bank, and we'll be donating hopefully somewhere around 1,000 loaves of bread shortly after November 30th. And so we're really excited about that, and we've worked in collaboration with Jessica Schenk, our science director, and we're putting on Jessica's helping to host a STEM science night where we open up the kitchen at Wahitas so families who don't have access to a kitchen of their own can come and bake their bread, and we have a ton of science activities planned, and so this will be a great way for kids to get hands-on science and also learn a vital activity of learning how to bake bread and again where their food comes from, and hopefully have a skill for the rest of their life. Thank you.
So this slide talks about we as an organization that's very interested in being the change in the world. And as part of the We organization, a requirement to attend an annual We Day that's over in Seattle with celebrities that come and talk about how to make changes in the world. As part of our ticket to get into that event, we have to do a local community event and we have to do a global event. So I'm working with the coordinator from the WE organization for our building in particular to do something globally that affects the world. Some of the global events that they are very interested in is education, water and food. Another one was bullying, online social interactions, appropriateness. So there's a few that you could take a look at on we.org. This year we've organized a student leadership team, and so this student leadership team will be the first to participate in the We Day and actually organize this global event.
So it's my pleasure this evening to speak with you about the responsibility and citizenship end. At Wahidas, we do want to ensure that our students take responsibility by participating efficiently and, of course, exhibiting ethical behavior on a regular basis. We did create a grid and a matrix within our building. So we are implementing a school-wide discipline practice at Wahidas. We do implement the PBIS. It is a research-based program that we use to explicitly teach behavioral expectations to all of our students. The base of the program is designed to meet the needs of 80% of our students. We have clearly defined the behavior, as exhibited here in the matrix, that we expect our students to exhibit in all areas of our campus, including hallways, commons, playground, restroom, etc. PBIS is being used because it's proactive and preventative. In addition, we have developed lesson plans to teach the behaviors to our students and have developed a reinforcement system to ensure the desired behaviors continue. When we see students demonstrating the appropriate behaviors, we recognize the behavior by giving things like hawk feathers, which they can spend within our student store. This month, we are promoting, basically it's a VIP table within our lunchroom, and the students have an opportunity, if they so choose with their hawk feathers, to put it into a drawing. It's selected out, and they get to sit in this place of honor with a buddy. So we're pretty excited about doing that for the students. To the left of the slide here, you'll see a classroom example of ways that you can reinforce positive behavior by earning tickets within the classroom, ranging from lunch bunch, with the teacher, a special grit table within the classroom itself, special markers, stickers, stuff that means nothing to us but is a huge deal for students. Hat day, sit next to a friend. So those are just a few examples of ways that we can honor the behaviors and the efforts of our students. So in addition to the Tier 1 that we spoke about earlier with the 80% of students, we do realize that there's about 15% that we need to address in different ways. So they do need a more intense program, and we are preparing to offer additional behavior support for those individuals. We have been working to identify and purchase counseling materials for students who need behavioral interventions. The research does tell us that up to 15% of our students may need something different, and we are preparing to meet those needs. Tier 3 students, it's about 5%, and we realize that they need more than what we can give them within our building. So we've opted to partner with the community to provide the necessary services to our students as well as their families.
I'll have Amy here. Just to wrap up, it says shaping the future in the end, one end at a time. I just want to give a huge shout out to our staff members. The Distinction Award it means a lot to us. And I know there are a lot of teachers that are not here tonight that should be recognized, and a lot of our staff members. So I'd like to take the opportunity to do that right now. I'm glad that Mr. Garza recognized Justin in that effort too. There's so many people. It started with a vision with one person, and that vision has carried on regardless of the leadership in the building, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. So thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Just a comment. Thank you for, so I know that scores are a big deal, right? We all want to get good scores. We want to see our students can perform on assessments. And so ends 1 is important. Obviously, it's an ends. But you guys spend a lot of time on ends 2 and 3, which I personally appreciate, because when we're talking about a student becoming a successful adult, it's a lot more than assessments, and you guys know that. And you're hammered with having to make sure that kids pass assessments all the time. And this is probably the fun stuff when you can talk about the things you've done for ends 2 and 3 that we're holding you accountable as a system for that, but probably a little less pressure than the accountability that you're held to by the state and the feds. So good job with that. Thanks for the presentation. It was great. We have another comment.
Thank you guys so much for what you're doing. Like, I would have loved to be able to go and like pick stuff when I was little. So knowing that future generations get to do that, it's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you, Wahidis. Great job. Moving on to item D1. And
I move to approve item D1, D2, and D3.
Second.
Motion's been made by Director Ashton and seconded by Director Simmons to approve items D1, D2, and D3. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 4-0.
We just accept the report. We don't need to vote on it.
And items D4 and D5 are just monitoring reports. Is there any questions about them? If not, we'll just move right along.
Yeah,
to
usually,
policy review.
I thought the ends reports are usually an oral report and a written report. So I just wanted to make sure we're going to get an oral report. I don't know if that's tonight or, okay.
Yep. Are we waiting to vote?
I move to approve. I was wondering if Tony wanted to speak to EL 17. That's why.
No, because it's a monitoring report, not a monitoring response document.
So
Sorry,
it's
EL
3.
3. I meant 1 and 2.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
I thought 3 was a.
Yeah, these are just for acceptance.
Yeah.
So your approval of the report and then the acceptance of number 3, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you get that, Talia?
Sorry about that.
No, I thought maybe you just missed 4, but you got 3. I like what you were doing. I'm sure they liked it even more. I move to approve. I'm sorry. I move to accept item D4, EL 17 monitoring report.
Second.
Motion's been made by Director Simmons to approve item D4, a monitoring report, and seconded by Director Mike Garza. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item D5.
And Chris is going to give us an oral report? Or?
Yes, we have the teaching and learning team here. We're going to turn over to Mr. P. Perez.
Good evening. Jump right into N2, kind of following Wahidis' lead there and the comments from the board about what you identify as fun around N2. I'm not sure that the teaching and learning team will present it in such a fun way this evening, but we certainly want to let you know that it's complex work. Certainly, we spend much of our time thinking about N1 in our jobs day to day, and appreciate the challenge of having to focus on N1 and 2, or N2 and 3 as well. The second slide there. Can we go right into the slides beyond the text? So, in the monitoring report, you're going to see the first 3 pages are the documents that actually detail the ends and measures, but we'll just jump right into the presentation. A reminder that our pipeline that we're trying to develop here is a system. We're going to be talking about certainly global competency and then some of the global pathways at either end of that spectrum, and that'll be the focus of the presentation this evening. I also want to remind the board certainly that we say this to ourselves quite frequently. It's quite a bold vision. This is not an easy task that we've been asked to undertake. I also want to take the opportunity to remind you about the instructional vision. Every chance that we get to share that with our community or any stakeholders, we should take that opportunity. And this is about making sure that these ends are accessible for all of the kids in our system. The next slide indicates the text that you all have developed in partnership with Dr. Hurst. I know you spent significant time and thinking around refining the ends over the last year and a half. And so that's the text that we've used to build the report. Part of your work in refining those ends was identifying measures and targets. And so I just wanted to define those terms for the board and for the stakeholders here in the room, that the measure is really the measurement tool to use or track progress, and the target is the amount of impact or the outcome that we think could be achieved during that academic cycle. And I've put a simple example in there for you. The measure might be high school graduation rate, and the target would be a 5% increase over last year. And some of these lend themselves to having, for lack of a better term, simplified targets. Some of the work is processes and systems that we're attempting to build, and part of that is building our own capacity around some of the initiatives that have come to our system in the last year and a half. The next slide, we talked about this imagery. If you could scroll down, please. This, if you think about that concept of eating an elephant one bite at a time, that didn't seem to apply in this circumstance, but that this bold vision that we're working towards, the ends, although they're identified 1, 2, and 3, they don't happen in isolation. We're reporting only on end 2 tonight in a particular area, but we wanted to remind the board that this is how we think about the work and the complexity of it, and that each of these pieces of the puzzle help us paint that picture. And today what we're going to talk about specifically would be the strategic initiatives or actions that we've taken to make movement towards making that vision possible. So the teaching and learning team will share, again, specific initiatives or actions that have taken place.
Good evening. So the document here, just a snapshot of this document is, I remember this summer when we worked and the administration team was all together and we split up and we had 3 groups and really worked focusing in on the ends and the details of it and the targets and the measures and the specific activities. And it was important to go to that level of detail to ensure that we reach those end goals. This document was a way for us to try to bring some clarity in the kind of the day-to-day work in looking at and keeping those large outcomes for each year in front of us. And so that's what this represents. And so you can see tiered from year 1 to year 4 and what we want to be. And of course we want all of our students, you know, you look at that end goal and what we want them to be and accomplish, but it takes some work and process around that. Reminded of a consultant that is building a home right now, and they said, I just picture myself Thanksgiving dinner and with family and friends and in our new home and celebrating, and then I look outside and I see a hole in the ground and realize I got to pour the foundation first. And so that's what this process is looking at, from the foundation all the way down to the complete structure.
So we each chose 1 or 2 things related to N2 that kind of falls in our area around work that we individually have done. So I would like to talk about this one around 21st century skills. My focus completely is around college and career readiness and what that means. And I've learned a lot about the national, state, and local indicators around that, and really dug deep in trying to figure out first where we stand and then next, what we can do after that. So some of my work has been seeds that have been planted in the past that I'm trying to develop and sort of bring everything together in a cohesive way. So the measure I'd like to talk about is our goal for all of our graduates around this end is that all of them will have 1 to 2 best works a year, as well as a college and career reflection done every single year. So the obvious, level that's happening at is secondary, but ultimately we'd like to have that for all students K-12. So we want our form of that to be through an electronic portfolio. So some of the work that I'm personally working on with the team and with principals and school staff, the next slide, excuse me, all of our 8th and 12th graders have a current reflection that we rolled out this year, actually as preliminary to the showcase, so that they would be prepared with kind of some prompts in their own mind about reflection. We have rolled out personal pathways in the secondary levels. For the class of 19 and beyond, which is the juniors this year and the rest of the kids after that, they need to have a personal pathway identified from the 8th grade on. So that really is a career cluster or sort of a target for where they think they want to head after high school. And then all the things that go with that. We're pretty excited, both the high school and Desert Oasis. We're laying the groundwork for January. Everybody will have a drive or a portfolio in their Google system now that everybody either has a Chromebook or access to one that will house all of this stuff we're talking about. So for the high schools, all of their is Husky Futures at Othello High School and the advisory program through Desert Oasis all have the same pieces. Advocacy around their own grades and their own work ethic, their high school and beyond plan that meets the state standards, social awareness or social justice, and then their best works. So that's going to be rolled out in January. And then finally, both high schools, as you know, have a revised senior project, which involves site visits and things that are right in line with this, that are much more aligned to post-secondary. So we're pretty excited about what's already been happening and what we'll continue to improve on.
So for global competencies, the end says that we're going to have students who are investigating the world, recognizing perspectives, communicating ideas, and taking actions. And the measure that last spring we talked about with this was the Asia Society Graduation Performance System rubrics. And these are rubrics that are built around content areas and are very specific to how teachers could specifically see this with their students. And this is also an area where we're building capacity. It's not something that we're ready to roll out to teachers yet. It's something that the directors are still learning about ourselves. So in that work, in developing our own capacity, we are still doing some really targeted work on integrated projects and learning intentions and success criteria. In that work, some of the specific things that we're doing with building that capacity is really making sure that we understand what design thinking is and how that can work into how teachers teach and how students learn. The learning progressions, learning intentions, and success criteria are all about teacher clarity, and that is a major focus of the district right now. And if we can have strong teacher clarity, then we're going to be able to see where we can fit global competencies into what we're teaching. The integrated projects are something that David Spencer and I have been working very closely with, especially with the K-5 level, to make sure that as we are looking for those real-world problems that students can be solving, that we're also not forgetting end 1, 2, so that we don't want to overwhelm our teachers with too much. Each building is working on a STEM action plan that is based off of a rubric that is identifying where they need to make growth in STEM and where they can have celebrations with what they're doing in STEM. And so those plans, I think, will really drive what we're going to end up doing with global competencies in the future. And then right now, CTE and engineering classes at the middle school and high school are starting to do some of this work. The kids are building things and designing things and solving problems in very real ways. And so the work has started. Long ways to go still, but we're on the way.
Another key component with N2 is financial skills and literacy and the importance of that. And so wanting to make sure that students who graduate through our system understand stewardship and effective decision-making around finance. One of the measures that we're looking at is that throughout our system, K-12, that there are opportunities for students to begin learning at an age-appropriate level. And so in the primary grades, that's understanding money and value of currency and that sort of piece. As they get upper grades, I know a lot of classroom teachers will do things like classroom economies and where there's classroom money and there's concepts of rent and buying things or penalties, fines, those sort of pieces. It's a fun and creative way to get kids start building their capacity. As they get to the high school, there's an opportunity to take a financial literacy course. And right now we have 60 students that are enrolled in that. That number will jump up significantly because our current freshman class, the class of 2021, they'll be required to take that as a graduation requirement, either their junior or their senior year. Some of the specific components of that course is goals and decision making, recognizing that they need to look forward and say, this is where I want to be at this time, and so what decisions do I need to make in order to achieve that goal? Career research and in starting salaries and the strategies to get to those fields. Budgeting, there's the H&R Block Budget Challenge. Sorry, Tony, competitor there. But this idea of these scenarios and that students can put themselves in so they can learn the risks and benefits. Savings and investings, the market exchange challenge, same type of thing, to know the inherent rewards or risks with that. Housing and renting, when does it make more sense to rent than purchase a home, and vice versa? And what are the costs associated with that? And then the everyday skills of banking and managing a checkbook. Our students are going to be walking out, and those that are attending schools are going to be offered a lot of loans and a lot of opportunities, and sometimes that looks like free money at first. Which we know it's not. So we want to make sure that they understand that, or when they're bombarded with credit card offers and those sort of pieces, that they understand how to personally manage their finances.
We also wanted to let the students know that personal health and fitness is a really important thing and stuff, especially at this young age. We want them to be active. And so the measures that we're looking at currently, 30% of our 10th graders and 21% of our 12th graders are reporting to do 60 minutes of activity per day. And what we want to do is we want to increase that, in the future. So some of the things that we're kind of looking at here is, as Don mentioned earlier, that we asked for some numbers to grab data on, what our middle school and what our high school students are, how many of them are participating. And I'm not sure, did we give these?
Yeah, so one of the other attachments there is the OSD athletic participation rate. So I'll talk about that briefly, Rigo, based on Don's, Director Bullis's comments earlier today. And what he noted was he'd actually done some work in breaking it down by actual season. So a different layer of work than we engaged in, but we see really the trend is pretty flat for MMS and for Othello High School related to participation. Our comments today and over the last couple of days in our teaching and learning team were we have to do a little bit deeper dig on what particular sports. We also had an interest in how many actual students were represented in this data. We know it's not 752, and over time, if it's how many students are we actually impacting day to day with this data? So this is just a sort of broad overview, and I think evidence of the development of a system of collecting and monitoring that data to report it out to the community.
So we also want to work with the community athletic participation. So we want to work with people at Public Works that put on the summer Little League program, see how many kids from our district actually enroll in that during the summertime to stay active. I run a youth baseball program here in Othello called the Old Town Bombers, and so that also happens during the summertime, so I'll be happy to provide any data the school wants, how many students attend our program, how much physical activity they're doing out throughout the day. We practice every single day, so that should tell you, 2 hours a day, so we actually do a lot of participation when it comes to our students in the community. We also want to engage in the Healthy Youth Survey. This is done every other year. So ours was taken last year in October, and we're looking to take it again in 2018 of October. And then the health and physical education. For the first time, we've hired a dedicated health teacher at the high school. This person has done extensive training on state standards for the healthcare education, so we're happy to have that person here as well.
Students are also going to be knowledgeable, and we're going to be very aware and focused on the cultural competencies and sensitivity to other culturally diverse communities around the world. So one of the ways we're going to measure this, and like Pete said, we're really developing ways to kind of monitor from here on forward. Using the CEE survey, the Center of Educational Effectiveness survey, is going to be delivered to all students in December. This has been in our system in the past, but it hasn't been delivered the same way across the system, so just making sure that we're using it all the same way so that we can get data that's really beneficial and doesn't have holes in it. The target will be benchmarking around high-performing schools. CEE delivers the data in multiple different ways, but one of the ways is they looked at what high-performing and successful schools, kind of where they're at on the spectrum, and then we can benchmark ourselves accordingly against those other schools. The first bullet here has already been done, collaborating with CE to develop the survey. We already have the survey in-house and ready to go, so like we said, we're going to be giving that in December. Partnering with the schools to, again, make sure that all kids are getting it. We're getting a good picture of where we are, and then just going forward with collecting and analyzing, what information are we getting and how can we move forward from there.
And continuing on with the idea of cultural competencies, part of this work has to do with sensitivity in culturally diverse communities, celebrating those differences, recognizing them, as well as being able to recognize inequity and injustice and then come up with a plan of action to deal with that. The measure that's been set out is that students will participate in a indirect targeted instruction around these areas. And for our target this year, we talked about building director capacity because we currently don't really have a system for that, but I know that saying we're developing a plan isn't really a plan, so if we can scroll to the next slide. These are some things that we've been focusing on. As a reformed social studies teacher, this is near and dear to my heart because I taught this a lot in my classroom. So we really see as a director team, through talking about it, that this can be addressed through the social studies content in our district. So developing a local system to celebrate cultures as well as building out that K-5 social studies structure. We're not quite ready to do that yet, but it is coming. Another avenue that we want to explore is what's known as P4C, which is philosophy for children. It's really housed or started in England, but UW is a local extension that does this work, so partnering with them. And it really focuses around building empathy in students and looking at other people's points of view, and it just dovetails nicely with this. So how do we work around with that critical thinking and embed it here in Othello and bring that to here instead of just the Seattle area?
Questions from the board?
Great presentation. My mic was off. Great presentation. It was good.
So I know ENDS 2 has changed over the years with us, but even if it was the same, best ENDS 2 presentation monitoring report yet. So nice job. I really liked it. I mean, you addressed every part of it and the plan and how we're going to measure it. So can't ask for much more than that. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. That was commendable delegation there.
Thank you, team. Thanks, Pete. Thank you, sir.
Moving on to item E, policy review. Under these items, we'll just try and go through them as quickly as possible. Item E1, EL12, is there any recommended changes? Okay, item E.
Hang on, you bear with me one. I keep having the, this might be something.
Refresh.
Rigo, I have to reload my.
I think it's something with board docs. This only happened tonight.
Oh, just board docs?
It's been doing it to mine too.
I don't know what's going on.
It might not be your fault, Rigo.
It's never happened before, so I think it's some glitch in their board doc system.
There was one or two of these ones that just had some wording that I thought we.
On EL12?
Yes.
Okay.
As I was reading this, we must have missed this when we were changing all of our verbiage before. So in number 8, if you read the whole thing, therefore the superintendent shall not cause or allow a failure to work with the board as a whole except when, and then D doesn't make sense, fail to report before the next regular. So I think it should say except when reporting reporting before the next regular scheduled board meeting, any actual, so there's gonna be commas in there, right?
Right.
Except when, so take out fail to, is what I would do on D. And it would be reporting, comma, before the next regular scheduled board meeting, comma, any actual or anticipated non-compliance with any board ends or executive limitation policies. Right?
Yeah, that makes much better sense.
I guess I have a question. Is that how it's always been? Has that always been item D? I'm not sure it even fits there.
Well, that might be a different discussion.
Because why would that be a failure? Why would that be an
you're thinking
exception
that's
to
supposed to be
working
number
with the
9.
whole board? I just don't know why it would be why that would be a reason not to work with the whole board.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I was thinking it was a little bit strange, but I thought, well, he might have to talk to the board separately to about that. But that must be that was supposed to be number 9, I think. Then
It seems like to me it should be.
so it
it's a
should
separate
say
line
a
item
failure
there.
to report then, but that should be item 9, and then 9 should become 10, 10 should become 11.
'Cause-
Good catch.
Because that's really saying that that if he's out of compliance, he's going to notify the board immediately.
Yep.
So if we can make those changes and then include them in the next policy review with the changes that were made in red, please, just so that we can approve it then. Any other recommended changes from the board? Okay. Moving on to item E2, EL 13.
I have one on this as well.
Okay.
They're not, there's no bullet points on this, but if we're using the same verbiage, we should say the superintendent shall not cause or allow a failure to, instead of the superintendent shall not fail to. Would you, the board agree?
Yes.
Yes. So we'll make that change as well and include it in our next policy review. Item E3. Item E3, E4, and E5 are all, is there any, I mean, they're all having to do with our board self-assessment, so is there any changes? I know that we only use one.
We
And
talked
I'm-
about putting this in so we could try to determine
I'm still
why
not
we
sure
have
why
2
we
and 3.
just use one.
I don't remember exactly.
It was.
I'm guessing we
There was a
had 3 in
cons-
there for us to just decide over time which one we wanted to use. I don't know why we'd ever use one at a different time.
Beginning of the year, I believe there was consensus from the board to just begin to use only one, and so I'm not sure if the board wants to select one or if there's a discussion.
Are we using 1.2 now?
1.2.
Yes.
Well, I think 1.3 and 1.4, they're just, the only difference is that they're patterned after GP9 and GP10, if that's the way we want to monitor ourselves. My personal opinion is that we eliminate those and just go to GP 4.1.2.
Because we already monitor GP 9 and 10 when we get there. So
Yeah, and that's
once
just
a year.
that's just us monitoring ourselves at every meeting using that criteria.
Okay.
Yep.
So do we,
What that is.
do I need a motion in order to get rid of 4.1.3 and
Yes,
4.1.4?
I think so.
I would say so.
Okay.
I move to eliminate for future use GP 4.1.3 and GP 4.1.4 from the board operating policies.
Motion's been made by Director Simmons to remove
Second.
these items, seconded by Director Ashton.
Moving on.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. There will be no need for executive session today, so we'll go right into upcoming events as I'm waiting for my computer to refresh.
Where you go?
Got it. Just a reminder for the board, WASDA conference is November 16th through the 19th. Please let Talia know the schedule that you will be attending as soon as possible. Also, our next school board visit is December 5th at McFarland Middle School. There will be an agenda sent to the board shortly. There's also a board dinner and meeting with community leaders and dignitaries December 12th. So if you can include that in your calendars if you don't already have it. And then also there is the National School Board Association Conference next year, 2018, is going to be in April, 7th through the 9th. So if you're interested, please let Talia know so that you can get registered. This conference will be held in San Antonio, Texas. Is there any other update or upcoming event that I'm missing? If not, we'll move on to item G.2.
I wanted to ask a question to the board about the meeting with the community leaders and dignitaries. Are we just wanting to do the same thing as last year? Or is that just maybe we look at that as being a board dinner, but we're going to pick another group to meet with for that?
I'm not sure that
one of the groups maybe from the committee that the recommendation came.
My personal feeling is that we should do this one the way it is because it's upcoming within a month, and then my personal feeling is we should wait until the new board's sworn in to come up with to process that committee list and come up with the plan at that time, rather than commit the two new board members to something that's going to happen after that.
What do you think, Mike?
I agree with Tony.
All right.
I'll let him have some.
Then I do too.
Okay. So it'll still be scheduled for December 12th.
The only question I had is December 5th is before the new board is sworn in. So I assume that means that the existing board will go to that December 5th meeting.
Correct.
It's open to the public though, so anyone can come.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't want Juan to be able to get out of it.
Oh. Cool.
I'll be in Hawaii. Anyway, moving on. Item G2, board self-assessment of meeting. So if you click on your SurveyMonkey,
It's 27 minutes too long.
so everyone get it?
Yep.
Okay. I always have a hard time with the screen here. Okay, so there was, I don't know what's going on here. This thing's not working right, but 4 members present. Moving on to general meeting behavior, questions. The agenda was planned to focus on the real work of the board. Three commendable, one satisfactory. The board followed its agenda and did not get sidetracked. One good, three commendable. The board's deliberations and decision-making processes were public. All four were commendable. Participation was balanced. Three good, one commendable. Members listened attentively. Two good and two commendable. Governance principles. Board actions occur at the policy level rather than the operational level. There is no comment. This does not pick up comments for some reason.
And we talked about that last meeting and the meeting before.
Oh,
It
there's,
shows it.
shows up there.
Shows up there, that's where I saw
Okay.
it. I was looking at that.
We spend a lot of time spent, I think he meant to say, a lot of time this evening
I know, I wrote
discussing and being informed on operational items.
You're the only one typing.
Okay, moving on to board actions occurred at policy level.
Can you
Yes,
discuss
all
that?
four.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. I mean,
Mr. President, I think we should discuss that
okay.
comment.
Mr. Ashton, would you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, I just felt like we devoted a good 25 minutes to our meeting going over operational items, and that's normally by policy something that we try not to do. So I just made that comment that
Which item specifically?
was the administrative team reports. Most of them were operational in nature.
Yeah, good point. That's true.
Informational, good stuff, but it could have just been presented in a written format and not dedicated so much time to it.
So strictly from a policy governance point of view, that I can't argue with that. I think that's true.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, board actions occur at the policy level rather than at the operational level. 4 yes. The board reviews policy about each topic before discussing that issue. 4 yes. In writing additional policies, I believe all four were, there was no additional policies, so that was not applicable. The board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting. All 4 yes. The board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. 3 yes, 1 not applicable, which I think is the correct answer.
Is
Thank
the
you.
yes?
So,
The yes or the?
no, the not applicable.
We didn't do any survey monkeys, right?
Right.
We didn't review policy or,
Stand corrected.
So, the overall,
the weighted average.
average was 2 good, 2 commendable. So 50-50 on those two. So, moving on then. Thank you, guys. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
been made by Director Mike Garza to adjourn, seconded by Director, who was it? Simmons. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned. Thank you. You gotta sign one more thing before you leave.
Maybe it's because it needs updated.